not a bad answer, but the answer will surprise you. With the Old Testament prophets, and this is it, all the Old Testament scholars with whom I have checked. Now you can always go to Frank Anderson, who knows as much as anybody. But since Frank Anderson was right on the counting of the Ten Commandments, he must be right on those too. We hope. Otherwise, I'll have to leave. The main thing about the prophets, and we have been misled in the past by certain liberal scholars who regarded the prophets as great innovators. They are conservative Yahwists wanting to bring Israel back to the truth of Moses, whom Calvin describes as the chief doctor. And Calvin's conception of the biblical prophets is crucial. Essentially, he conceived the role of the Old Testament prophet as being twofold. First and foremost, they were seen as guides, expounders of the law. They are teachers. They perform a didactic office, teaching office, and their doctrine is based on the teachings of Moses, whom Calvin calls the chief teacher. Only secondarily, terribly important point, only secondarily, and as a kind of textual necessity, did Calvin consider the prophetic role of foreteller of human events. For Calvin, foretelling of future events is a secondary role compared to the major one of being true to Moses. And this is really true. As you read the prophets, you know, Israelites are getting all involved in Baal worship and all kinds of other horrible things and ridiculous ceremonies and all this kind of junk. And by the way, I hope you read that wonderful article on Calvin's use of the prophetic criticism of temple worship. I despise your lousy, stinking sacrifices, smelling sacrifices, when you have not love and when you have not justice and all this kind of stuff. So, anyway, granted, in the Old Testament, there is something about the prophet as the foreteller, but most people think that's the main thing. Isn't that right? Oh, a prophet. They foresee the future. Baloney. That is not the main point. And I have written in this book, this is a book called The Teaching Office in the Reformed Tradition by Robert Henderson, S-O-N. The poor guy's not a Dane, so it's S-O-N. And Jim Sanders, the translator of Psalm 151, who was a kid who was over in Palestine when this was found and is now teaching the Old Testament down in Claremont. I had him read this page from Calvin, and I have it written, and he writes in his own handwriting. This is essentially in accord with present scholarship. J.A. Sanders. Again, showing Calvin's remarkable ability as a biblical scholar. He really knew his stuff. He's still relevant. So, Calvin granted that as a foreteller of his own posterity, David was a prophet, but with that statement, he lets the matter rest. Moreover, he interpreted the fact that the function of foretelling had ceased sometime before the advent of the Messiah, as a result of a definite plan on the part of God. And although the function of prediction had been in abeyance, that of the expounding of the law had not. Calvin even applied the term doctor to the Jewish scribe. And he talks about scribes who sit in the chair of Moses, that is, to teach. So, these two orders of ministry. Now, you've got the prophetic doctoral office. That's the office of the doctor, the office of the teacher. And the office of the minister is the apostolic pastoral office. That's number one. The apostolic pastoral office. Then number two, you have the doctors. That is the prophetic doctoral office. And any comments or any questions about that? Where these come from?
Do you think those two offices operating at the same person, such as the pastor?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question. There is, of course, an overlapping. And as we said, when the pastor gets sick, then the doctor comes and does his work for him. But the main thing about the doctor is the teaching in the schools. Like occasionally I'm invited to teach or preach or something in a local church, and that's fine. I'm ordained and I can do that. And so on. But my main function is still a teacher. The main function of a local pastor is to take care of the local congregation. But yeah, there's an overlapping because Calvin would like a lot of the sermon to be teaching. Okay, now quickly we come to the third order, which is that of the elders. And this is quite lovely. We'll have somebody read this. Who else wants to do a little reading? Anybody? Miles, you have it. Thank you, Sucker. I'm glad you volunteered. Never volunteer again, but I'm glad you did.
Concerning the third order, which is that of elders, their office is to have oversight of the life of everyone.
Yes, I would stress. I mean, really snooping around. But not only for bad, but also for good. If somebody's sick, if somebody's hungry, if somebody needs something, somebody ought to know. Not just if somebody is engaging in immoral conduct.
In the ancient church, the one reputed to receive, to spend, and hold goods for the poor, not only daily alms, but also concessions, rents, and pensions. The other to tend and care for the sick and administer allowances to the poor.
Okay, one you see and the general hospital, which I think I already mentioned. Right? Okay, Mickey, keep on going. You're doing very well.
The number of procurators.
Excellent. You learn. That's
Appointed
good.
for this hospital seems to us to be proper, but we wish that there be also a separate reception office, so that not only provisions be in kind that pay better, but that those who wish to do some charity may be more certain that the gift will not be employed otherwise when they attend.
All right. Then it goes on to say the election of both the procurators and the hospitallers is to take place like those held at the Republicans. First, 1971. And this is an article by Kingdon. I think I'd already mentioned Kingdon, graduate of the University of Chicago, studied under Houck, but mainly under John T. McNeil, on Calvin.
Right.
Where he has a whole article called Social Welfare in Calvin's Geneva. I want to make a few points of this. I am going to let you out early, not because I love you, but I can hardly stand up. And so he says, the study of social welfare in Calvin's Geneva must focus on a single institution, the Hôpital Général, or the General Hospital. It was more than a hospital in the modern sense of the term. It was an all-purpose institution that provided hospitality. So when I ask you on your test to identify the Hôpital Général, or the General Hospital...
Could you spell it on the board?
Yes.
Do not say that it is the TV program.
Well, I'll give you half for that. Make sure I get all the French accents right on this, but yes. Yes. Everybody see that? It was an all-purpose institution that provided hospitality to all sorts of people, as we have already seen. It maintained a large building in the center of Geneva that housed several dozen children. most of them orphans, or kids who had been deserted, and a smaller number of old people who were too old, too sick, too badly crippled to care for themselves. I'm so anxious now that the country returned with this type of help. It distributed bread every week to poor households throughout the county and provided shelter and food every evening to visitors who had just come to town and could not pay. The General Hospital was a creation of the Reformation, but not of Calvin. It was established in 1535. When did Calvin come to Geneva? 1536. That's right. As one of the series of measures by which Geneva broke all connection with the Roman Catholic Church and established a Protestant regime. Before the Reformation, charity in Geneva and all over Catholic Europe was haphazard. People were begging on the streets and you could do good things and so on. The Protestant Reformation put rationality and reason to work. We will take care of everybody in need. If you can work, we'll put you to work. If you can't work, we'll take care of you. Still the best idea. No one wants us to be on welfare if one can work. So, in establishing this new institution, the Geneva community endorsed two principles that had characterized the movement for welfare reform. It became rational and laicized. The General Hospital replaced a number of different and competing earlier institutions with a single rationally organized institution, and the direction of this institution was entrusted entirely to laymen drawn from the relatively prosperous merchants who ruled this city state. So, all the welfare of Geneva now was concentrated in this one building. All the 7 hospitals that had existed earlier were abolished. The properties of these institutions were turned over to the new General Hospital. And including, I talked to you about the Roman Catholic nun who had to leave Geneva, Jeanne de Jussy, and wrote this wonderful book called Calvinist Germs. She didn't really like the Protestant Reformation. She was kicked out. But it's a very interesting work from the Roman Catholic point of view about the Reformation in Geneva. I did mention that to you, or did I? Jeanne de Jussy?
No.
Jeanne, Jussie, Calvinist Germs. You want to know about that. Kingdom has translated that document in a book called Transition and Revolution, and you can see what the Protestant Reformation looked like in Geneva from the point of view of a Roman Catholic nun. A different point of view from Claudine Levet, about whom we spoke earlier. A full-time hospitaler was hired. He was required to move into the headquarters building with his family. These are one of the deacons, the hospitaler. He moved into the hospital with his family. He got free room and board to make it an attractive job. A number of assistants and servants worked under the direction of the hospitaler. A surgeon, providing medical care to the poor. And another was charged with educating the children in the hospital. This was probably a young man who was studying to be a pastor. The hospitaler was in turn, and all of his workers were responsible to the board of the stewards, which we talked about, who raised the money. And Calvin was certainly interested in the operation of this kind of thing. Any comments or any questions? Yeah.
Are we going to talk about the sacraments ever again?
Yes.
Okay.
In great detail. Probably not next week. When we get to them in the institutes, and Calvin has a fully developed doctrine of the Eucharist, we will talk about it. Then, one other thing of the sacraments. We will be out of here in 5 minutes, I promise. Does anybody find that, of the sacraments, in your book?
Yes.
Read it. Loudly.
Baptism is to take place at the time of sermon.
Why? What? Baptism means the engrafting into the body of Christ. So the body of Christ should be there. We don't do private baptism. Even well, in some cases, if somebody's 106 years old and is being baptized for the first time and so on. So maybe that's something else. But it should be done in front of the whole congregation. The baptismal font in congregational and Presbyterian churches is in front. The baptistry in Baptist churches is in front. So everybody's gathered around and sees this, and you're being engrafted into the body of Christ. Okay, keep on going.
And should be administered only by ministers or coadjutors.
Keep on.
The names of children with those of their parents are to be registered, that if any be found of baptism,
Yes, go
the
ahead.
magistrate may be informed. The stone or baptismal font is to be near the pulpit, in order that there be better hearing for the recitation of this mystery and practice of baptism. Only such strangers as are men of faith and of our communion are to be accepted as godparents.
Okay. Then it goes on to talk about the Lord's Supper. We've already talked about that, and you will note that one of the paragraphs, the tables should be set beside the pulpit. Everything in front. But you've got a table, you've got a pulpit, and you've got a baptismal font, Our Lady with a baptistry. All of these in front. These are the divinely instituted means of grace, not the church flag, not the American flag, not a bowl of flowers or something like that. Yes, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just have a question. And so many of Calvin's things are based on Scripture. Where is it in Scripture that only ministers are to give baptism and the Lord's Supper?
Is there any example in the entire New Testament of anybody else doing it?
Well,
Now, there's a lot of Lord's Supper. Paul, for instance, does it. And then you've got the business on the road to Emmaus, but all of these people are apostles. Maybe that's the way he'd argue.
Well, in the Great Commission, Jesus says just go and make disciples, baptizing them. He doesn't say all ministers go.
And all the Protestant reformers buy that to the following extent. If you are at a situation when there's no ordained person there, do it as a lay person, and it's just as valid. The problem is to protect the Lord's Supper for people doing it who don't know what they're doing. But they buy what you're saying in part, because if you are in a situation when there are only lay people and it should be done, do it. Okay? I think there's one other important thing having to do with the consistory. That is toward the end, and with that we can then leave. This is very important in the Reformed movement. The consistoire in French, the consistory in the Dutch churches and other churches. It says, of the order which is to be observed in the case of those in authority for the maintenance of supervision of the church. The elders, as already said, are to assemble once a week, now get this, with the ministers. That is to say, on a Thursday morning, to see that there be no disorder in the church, and to discuss together remedies as they are required. Because they have no compulsive authority. Get the point? The ministers don't have any power of the sword or jurisdiction. May it please their lordships to give them one of their officials to summon those whom they wish to admonish. If anyone refuse with contempt to comply, their office will be to inform their lordships in order that remedy be applied. If there be anyone who dogmatizes against the received doctrine and all that, and if one is negligent in coming to church if corrections, and so on. So it's the elders consisting of the consistory consists of the ministers and the elders. Its task was to administer church discipline.